Hello everyone and welcome back to another Dark Souls beginner guide video. I wanted to take some time in the beginning of this video to talk about stats again because I went and watched my first video and I thought it was even still a little confusing, so I hope to clear it up a little bit better this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over pretty much everything I talked about last time. And we're going to start off with the longsword, because that's what I used last time to try and compare stuff. So I'm going to try again with the longsword to better explain my stats. I could probably use a shield if I wanted to, but I'm going to go back to the longsword because I think it makes more sense when you look at a weapon. Alright, so I have my longsword that is an attack type of regular and thrust, and it's a straight sword. And what that means is that it's going to have an attack moveset like another straight sword would. It might do a stab instead of a slash with some of the attacks, but overall it's going to have the same kind of attack style. I have parameter bonuses and required parameters down here, and your parameter bonuses determine what kind of extra damage you get, while your required parameters determine whether or not you can even use the weapon to begin with. So parameter bonuses here with the C in strength and the C in dexterity are giving me extra damage. That's what this 16 up here next to the 80 is. That is coming from my stats, my 15 strength and 14 dexterity over here. And if that was higher, then I would do more damage. Say this might be a 20 instead of a 16. Now, your required parameters down here, it says I need 10 strength and 10 dexterity, 0 intelligence, and 0 faith to use this weapon. I have 10 strength, in fact I actually have 15, and I have 10 dexterity, in fact I actually have 14, which means I have the required stats to use this. And I have 9 intelligence and 9 faith to use this weapon too, but it doesn't, actually require it. It's just there. Some weapons you do require intelligence and faith to actually use effectively. Next, I'll talk about durability, which it says I have 194 out of 200 here. And that's really good since I've been using this sword since the beginning of the game in the tutorial, and it just goes to show how little your weapon actually degrades. So that's not something you need to worry about unless you've been using the same weapon for a really long time. Down here we see weight, which is 3 units, or 3 pounds, and that's really not much. There are a lot heavier weapons, but it is a stat to look at when you're choosing a weapon. Now, let's recap equipment load. So right here, the left number, the 21.4, is how much I have equipped. And that's out of 52, which is out of my max equipment load I can actually carry. Now, you want to keep your first number under 50% if you want to do a medium roll, under 25% if you want to do a light roll. Between 50 and 100% is a heavy roll, and over 100% means no rolling, no running, very slow movement. So you really want to look at that, otherwise your character's going to not move as fast as you want him to. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is attunement, and this is a topic that a lot of people get confused on, and it's really important that you understand this. So, attunement is like spell equipment load. It's what allows you to actually equip spells to your character. It says over here I have 0 attunement slots, and that's because my attunement stat isn't high enough. I could have the intelligence or the faith over here for a spell, but if I don't have the attunement, which you level this up like any other stat, then I can't equip it. And if I level this up, then my slots might go up to 1 or 2, depending on how much I level it up. You're not going to see a change immediately, most likely, but level up attunement a few times and you'll notice the number of slots go up from 0 to 1. Alright, this next part I'm actually going to visually demonstrate a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to show is overkill. And it's what happens when you kill an enemy in one hit. So normally when you kill this soldier here, he only gives you 60 souls. But if you kill him in one go, he gives you 72 instead. Another concept is counter damage, which is the flash that happens sometimes when you attack. Down in the bottom right there were two examples that showed a flash and a not flash, and you can see the corresponding damage down there too. Sometimes counter damage can be triggered by kicking, which I didn't explain, so I'll take a moment here to kick. And kicking happens when you do forward on the left thumbstick and right bumper at the exact same time. If you use the trigger instead of right bumper, so you use right trigger, you do the jump attack, which I just did. Now, kicking can break a guard, and it can also cause some extra counter damage. And it's helpful in certain situations for these enemies here that are blocking. So toy around with the attacks a little bit, try kicking, try some jump attacks, and maybe try to get some counter attacks and see what you can do to cause the flash to happen, because that'll get you extra damage. I know for sure that attacking during some of their attacks sometimes, or just after or just before, will cause counter damage. And kicking will cause counter damage typically. So just play around with it and see what you can do, and it'll help you understand the game later.
Well now, you seem to have your wits about you, hmm? Then you are a welcome customer. I trade for souls. Everything's for sale. Things are getting treacherous in these parts. A horrible goat demon has moved in below. And up above, there's that humongous drake and a bull demon too. If you stick around this place, it might end up being your grave. Here, I'm not here to chit-chat. We talk business or we talk nothing at all. Here, I'm not...
So this guy is your first merchant in the game, and he sells a lot of different things. You can try all these out if you want. I wouldn't really buy anything consumable right now because they're not that useful, but you can if you want. I'm going to buy this stone, and that'll allow me to put down messages for other players if I want. And you're definitely going to want to buy this residence key, because that's going to allow you access into some houses around the area. You can also buy different weapons if you want to try different weapons because you don't like the ones that you have or whatever. And you can buy some shields. If you're going to buy anything else, I'd recommend to get this heater shield because it's awesome. You can also buy arrows or bolts if you want. We don't have a bow, but if you chose the hunter, you do. We'll also be getting a crossbow shortly, so you can get bolts, and you can also buy some of his armor if you want to. But after that, we're going to head over here, and we're going to talk about what he just said, because he actually said a couple things. That there's a bull demon and drake above, and then a goat demon below, which means that you should probably be looking for those if you're trying to progress the game, because he wouldn't have said anything if they weren't important. That's just kind of how this game works. But you don't have to worry about it if you're just going to follow along. Anyway, you'll want to climb up this ladder here after killing those guys. And we'll run up here and get this item, which are throwing knives. And we're going to want to make a jump here. So be prepared to fight if you don't make this jump. It's kind of tricky, but you just sprint and jump near the edge of the roof, and you should make that jump okay. If you don't, you're going to have a couple guys to deal with, but they're not very tough. Then once you make that jump, you run over here to the right side of the exit, and we grab our first crossbow that you can start playing around with if you want. And then if you get in a situation like this where there's enemies, try to do a plunging attack. I just got 2 for 1 there, and a short sword from that. And these are the guys you'd have to fight if you fell anyway. And we need to kill these guys to get another item. So it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of a long run back to the shopkeeper and up that ladder if you miss it. So when we go down here, be careful of ambushes. I'm just unequipping things from my quick inventory because I don't want that to be in my way for combat. But yeah, be careful of ambushes down here because there are enemies that are hanging off the railing and they will climb up and surprise you. In fact, one guy starts running around before you even get down here, and I'm hearing some noises, which means that he is somewhere. I don't know where. So just keep an eye out for enemies. But they climb up like that guy just tried, and you can't hit them while they're climbing, but once they're done climbing over, you're good. I can hear him. There are some hanging guys there. There he is. Okay. That's what I'm talking about. That guy wasn't there, and he started moving. So always keep an eye out for those kinds of enemies. Now, these guys over here, we can actually hit their hands before they climb up, just not while they're climbing. And they will die. It takes a little bit. I don't think that's supposed to be a fall that kills things, but since you can't go down there yet, and these guys can't get up, or something happens, I think they despawn or something. Because they do die, and they do give you souls. It just takes longer than it should if they were to, you know, fall to death. Anyway, so after we kill those guys and climb up this ladder, we're going to grab this humanity back here. So we went that whole loop to get rubbish and humanity, and even though rubbish is basically junk, it does have a use. Pretty much everything in this game has a use. So even if you think it's worthless, don't get rid of it, because it could be useful later. Next on my list of things to do is to go back to Firelink and pick up one weapon I didn't grab. It's actually the area under Firelink, and I didn't grab it in the last video because I didn't feel the need to go down there, because there's nothing to really do down there. And I wanted to kind of get with the game and not spend hours and hours just exploring and explaining things, because that's a pretty boring video, and I didn't want to have one really long, dull video. I wanted to have two less dull videos if I could help it. But things will definitely pick up after this video. Most of the explaining of how to play the game will be out of the way, and then we can just play. Focus on clearing areas and killing bosses, because that's the most exciting part of this game. So we're going to go back to Firelink, and we get to hear the music again. There shouldn't really be anything new to do. I guess, I was gonna show you some weapon stuff, but then I decided I should probably wait until after I get the next weapon, so this is just me having a moment of clarity. You can run down here, and you can talk to her, but she doesn't actually say anything, so you really can't talk to her. But she can reinforce your Estus Flask, which I'll cover in a different video. But if you go down here, there's this side path, which you may or may not have actually discovered already. And you want to go down this elevator. And here we are to New Londo Ruins. This place is dark and spooky, and there's a reason for that. That's actually the really cool thing about Dark Souls, is that every area has a reason for being the way it is. It tells you pretty much everything about this game. It's not just an area that they built because they thought it was cool, it's actually got a part in the story that's interesting. But New Londo Ruins looks like it could be a beginning area because there are weak enemies, and you can explore relatively easily, but you're going to run into stuff like this. This is a locked door we can't actually open unless you have the Master Key. If you chose the Thief class or chose the Master Key as your item, you can actually open that door. There's no real benefit for you right now because you're still new at the game, but it does unlock shortcuts to areas that would take a lot longer to go the normal way. But we're going to go the normal way for the sake of playing.
Well, this is unusual. You haven't lost your head. And more importantly, you're free. How on earth? Well, I shouldn't pry. I'm Ricky of Vinheim. I was once an established smith. Look at me now. Can you believe it? Hmm? What is it? Have you? Oh no. Don't worry. I've no intention of escape. It's safe here. I can't bear the thought of going hollow out there. Although, I must admit, I've not much to occupy myself. How about this? I could forge your weapons, albeit with rather minimal tools. I'll show you what made me the best in Vinheim.
So this guy is technically your game's first blacksmith you can encounter. And blacksmiths can upgrade your weapons to make their base damage do more with these Titanite shards up here, which I don't have any, but you may have one from killing the hollow soldiers that we've been killing recently. You also need souls to upgrade your weapon, which I have the souls, I just don't have the upgrade material. I'm gonna get into blacksmithing in the next video, I think, so don't really worry about this too much, but if you kinda know about blacksmithing or you wanna kinda try it anyway, you can go to this guy and he can upgrade your stuff. He can also do that with your armor, and he can repair your stuff. That's pretty much what I would do at this point. If your weapon is broken or is weaker and you're afraid that it's gonna break, then go ahead and try and get it repaired. It shouldn't really break or anytime soon, but, you know, go ahead if you want. But the other thing, the reason why you want to come down here, is he actually sells some spells, too. So this requires 12 intelligence and 0 faith, and this one requires 10 intelligence and 0 faith. If you're a sorcerer, you could buy these spells, and that would be something different for you. You can also buy a sorcerer catalyst if you feel like you want to try magic, but you didn't start as the sorcerer class.
What is it? There's nothing to talk about.
But there's really not much to do with him right now.
But what's there really to moan about? Come back soon. Smithing helps soothe my nerves. Don't let me wither away out of idle. Ah, what weapons have you? What? There's nothing. What's happened?
So yeah, when you're done with him, whatever you do decide to do with him, you can run down here, and we're gonna break this jar. We actually already just passed the weapon that I was talking about, but we want to get this now, just so we don't forget later. Now, if you're really feeling ambitious, you can go this way. You're gonna have to use the items we just picked up, because there are ghosts that you can't hit unless you use that item. I wouldn't do that right now. That's not really meant to be done right now. You totally can, but it's gonna be kind of difficult. So instead of doing that, we're gonna go ahead and just kill this guy and grab our weapon, which is Estoc here. And Estoc is a favorite by a lot of people because it's a thrusting weapon and a slashing weapon. So it's a thrusting sword like a rapier, but it also has some slashes too. So it's a nice combination, and for PvP, a lot of people like to use it. But that's not to say that you can't use that weapon for PvE, or just, you know, playing the game. PvE is player versus environment, but it's not to say that you can't use it to beat bosses and stuff. It's just that it's more favored in PvP because it can throw players off and it does decent damage against them. And I'm gonna showcase the weapon and the other weapons I've picked up anyway, so you can see what I'm talking about and why you might want to use it. It's also a dexterity based weapon, not super dexterity like a dagger, but it does have some dexterity scaling to it. which I'll cover actually right now, because I haven't really shown you guys what all the weapons can do and your choices. When comparing weapons, everything that you see is going to be in regards to your current equipped weapon. So this has a regular attack type and it's an ultra greatsword, which regular is like slashing attacks and ultra greatsword means it's bigger, it's a super sword basically. This blue 130 means that I do more damage with this weapon by default because the longsword does 80. But it has this red 105 because I actually don't have the stats to use it effectively. Now over here, it's telling me if I were to block with the weapon, everything's better. That this weapon, if I had to block with a weapon, I should choose this weapon instead. So it's telling me it scales a C in strength, but it has a red 24 for strength, and that's because I don't have the strength. I only have 15 to use this one-handed and effectively. If I try to use it, I don't swing it fast at all. This 10 dexterity here is fine because I have 14 dexterity. This C over here is blue because it has slightly better scaling than the longsword that's currently equipped. Even though they're both C letters, it's slightly better because it's in blue, and that's what tells you it's better. This has a red D, so not only is it a letter lower, like in the alphabet, it's also red, telling you that it's worse than your currently equipped weapon. And anything in red is like that. So I go from 3 units for weight to 10 units for weight, and that is worse because I'm going to have to increase a stat to be able to carry that better. Whereas this S-Stock we just picked up, it has a D in strength and a C in dexterity. It's flip-flopped, so it has better scaling in dexterity than my longsword I have currently equipped. Everything else is red though, and you can see up here it says it's a regular / thrust weapon, and it's also a thrusting sword. This mace is a hammer, and it actually has this icon down in the bottom. This is bleed. Bleeding, basically if you pick a weapon that has bleeding, it's good because it has bleeding. So it might lack in actual physical attack, but it has a modifier that many other weapons don't have, which we'll discuss later. Here's the wing spear and the crossbow and the talisman. I picked all this up in the early beginning part of this video and the end of last video, pretty much. We got shields here too. So everything you see here is being compared to my longsword. The difference between a short sword and a long sword is its base physical damage and how much it weighs, and the size of the blade. So the long sword actually has further reach. But they're gonna have the same type of attack because they're both straight swords. See, this does normal slashes you've been seeing me do with the long sword, but this is the short sword instead. Now the long sword, you'll see that the blade is longer. It weighs a little more, but it has the same attack, same speed, same everything because it's a straight sword. Compare it to S-Stock here, which is a thrusting and slash sword. I now do thrusts with the normal attack, and I do slashes with the power attack. So that's why it's a slash or regular / thrust weapon. You can also two-hand your weapons and block. Here's the two-handed power, and there are two-handed normal attacks. It's mostly a thrusting sword, but when you do the one-handed power attacks, you can do the slashes. And that's what makes this weapon unique, is because most rapiers you can't do that. They only do thrusts. So the next weapon I'll use is the Morning Star, and here you can see that it swings a lot slower, but a lot heavier too. It is a strength weapon. It scales only in strength, none in dexterity, so if you do want to use this weapon, you would want to scale only your strength. because scaling dexterity would not be a benefit. The only thing about it is you can see how slow it is. So it's not really recommended because slow weapons leave you vulnerable for long periods of time because you have to recover from your swing. But it's also got the bleed modifier, which you can test out and try sometime if you want to kind of figure out what bleed's all about. And I'll show bleed in a later video, but I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to confuse you. But basically, it's a little side effect that some weapons have that does extra critical damage. And that can be really helpful at times, and there are certain builds and certain weapons that do it that are really effective at doing it. But we don't really have any of those right now, so I'm not going to cover it really in depth. So all I'm doing now is leveling up my character so that I can show you how to use certain weapons effectively and to show off their movesets. So I increased my strength by 1 and my dexterity by 1. And I'll show you the winged spear next. Now this is a cool weapon. Basically all thrusting weapons are good because of their reach that they have, and the winged spear is just better than the normal spear. And it's got some different attacks, like it does have a couple slash attacks if you roll, but mostly you want this range that you get from it. You can stab all enemies in a hallway or something without worrying about hitting your weapon on the wall. In addition to that, thrusting weapons have this behind the shield stab here, which means you can block and attack at the same time. S-Dot can do this too, so if that's something that interests you, you can actually try doing that. You can block and attack. And you have to keep in mind though that both consume stamina. So attacking is going to consume stamina and blocking is also going to consume stamina. So it's not just you can do this forever, you only can do this a few times. But it is helpful in certain situations. Now I think it's time to move on to Zweihander. And it tells me I can't use this with one hand, but I should try holding it with two hands. And that's because Dark Souls does something really neat. Basically, whenever you two-hand a weapon, your strength goes up by 1.5 times its value. So I have 16 strength, and so half of 16 is 8, and 16 plus 8, since that's 1.5 times, is 24, which tells me that I can two-hand this weapon effectively. I still can't one-hand it effectively, but I can two-hand it. And if you look at the stats, it'll say I do 130 minus 105 right now. And that's because I'm not two-handing it. If I go ahead and two-hand it, suddenly the weapon lights up, and it tells me I now do 130 plus 45. So I'm already doing way more damage than I was doing before. Now, Zweihander is an ultra greatsword, and ultra greatswords swing this slow. The benefit of it is that you can knock enemies flat on their backs, and you can do tremendous amounts of damage. In addition to all of that, you can also stagger opponents, or kill them in one shot a lot of times. It's a fantastic weapon if you're trying to use strength weapons that are big, hulky, and slow. But you have to be aware that you're going to leave yourself vulnerable for a long period of time. So it's something to consider. I would recommend using that weapon if you do want to use hulky weapons. But for now, I think you should stick with a straight sword or something, just until you get more comfortable with the game. So now pretty much all the explaining is taken care of. From here on out, we should cover more actual fighting and techniques, or maybe story or lore or whatever, than we will explaining how the game works. So from here on out, it's going to be a little faster paced, and it's going to be a lot more fun, just because we're going to actually traverse the game now. So we're gonna run through the waterway and go ahead and just get back to the Undead Berg bonfire. Here you can toy around with some attacks like backstepping or, you know, blocking and trying to get those counter hits. That was a counter hit. Even though I didn't block, I did a lot more damage and it did the flash. Now pay attention to what happens when I kill that guy. You see, I just got a black soul mass when I killed him instead of an actual, like, pure white one. That black mass was actually humanity, and now I have a 0-1 in my counter instead of a 0-0 like it was before. And that's what we call soft humanity, which I can't remember if I talked about it too much, but the crushable hard humanity that I used to kindle bonfires in the last video, I crushed it, it turned into soft humanity, so it turned into a 0-1 or 0-2, and then I used it that way. Hard humanity in the crushable form is never lost when you die, but soft humanity is. So if it's in your counter and you die, and then you die again without recovering your souls, then you do not get it back. Which is why people favor hard humanity, because it's safer to carry around than soft humanity. But you can totally just go around and kill enemies because it's actually an invisible counter that determines when you get one. When that's full from killing enemies, then you get a soft humanity, and that only happens when you haven't defeated the area boss. Also, summon signs like this don't show up unless you haven't beaten the boss either. That's actually another player online ready to help me right now. And if I wanted help, I could actually summon him into my world and he could help me kill all the enemies around here and the boss. And he'll stick around until he dies or until we kill the boss. Here's another one. Now, if you defeat the boss, those no longer show up. So they're only around mainly to help you with the boss. In later games, they've changed it a little bit so that you don't have to worry about that. But I could summon one of these people to help me out with the upcoming boss. But I'm not going to do that because I'm going to play it as if you don't really have any help. I might summon computer people to help me for quest lines and stuff. But you'll always be able to summon the computer because they're built into the game. You won't be able to summon humans all the time. Just in case you're playing offline or whatever, you don't have Xbox Live or, you know, online gaming capabilities. Moving on, if you run into this building here and kill these guys, then you can run over to this chest and open it up and get some black fire bombs, 5 of them. They're like normal fire bombs but stronger, and you don't really need them for anything, but they're handy to have around just in case you're having problems killing an enemy or you're trying to get range and trying to destroy something that you can't reach with your weapon. Usually arrows or anything else works too. Throwing knives, normal fire bombs, those all work too. So black fire bombs just do more damage. So they're really nice for something that's weak to fire and you're just trying to kill it fast. And always pay attention to enemies that are up on really high spots like this, because they were throwing fire bombs down at us the whole time, and we were able to eventually loop back around and kill them. So pretty much if there's an enemy somewhere attacking you, you can get to it. I can't really think of any cases where you can't. So this little message here says try ranged battle, and you totally could sit in this tower and shoot people. Or you can just go down there and hit them with your sword, it doesn't really matter. But before I do that, I'm going to open this door. Now if you bought the residence key like I said you should, you'll be able to go in here and you'll be able to pick up a couple consumable things that will actually help you for this next boss fight if you're struggling. It's called gold pine resin, and what it does is applies lightning to your weapon. as long as your weapon's in your right hand, which I'll actually show when we get to the boss fight in just a couple minutes, because it's really not that far away. Now, for times like this, when you've got more than one enemy that's attacking you, it's best to try and bait an attack of theirs. So try to get one dude to attack with some sword and try to get the other to be backed up a little. And you can practice your parrying, because it comes in handy for stuff like that. Plus it looks cool when you just kill a guy and then turn around and kill his friend immediately after. It's also fun for charging attacks like that. Now, when we head up here, there's actually a trap to the left. If you run up the stairs just a little bit, he's going to kick this barrel, and he somehow killed himself. But as long as you run up just a little bit, and then run back down, he will kick that barrel, and it'll completely miss you. Plus, it doesn't even come back if you die. The guy will, but not the barrel. And for this next part here, we're going to be fighting a less common enemy called a Black Knight, and he is very, very tough. So, suggestions: number one, don't fight him right now unless you plan on dying or plan on learning how to kill him. He's really powerful. You can always come back and kill him later. He doesn't go anywhere. Number two, if you do decide to attack, try parrying or try backstabbing. Or number three, you can always go with ranged attacks, but they don't do that much damage. Or number four, if you have a heavy weapon, you'll do a little bit better just because you do more damage. I'm good enough that I can parry his attack without really having to worry about it too much. So I'm just going to stand here and parry him so you can watch just about when I do it. And they're pretty generous with the time frame in which you need to swing your shield. And if you notice, all I'm doing is waiting for him to bring his arm back and swing. Every time he stands up, he wants to do that. Well, I shouldn't say every time, but nearly every time he'll want to do that. So you can really catch him in an infinite loop. And I just got a Black Knight sword. You'll get a Titanite chunk, but the Black Knight sword, or any of their weapons, because there's different varieties, or their shield, is rare. You can get those later at the end of the game, but that weapon is really powerful. Even if you don't get it, the reason why you come down here to kill him is for the souls and for this ring, which it's called the Blue Tear Stone Ring, and all it does is when you're low on health, you glow with a light, and then it'll reduce the amount of damage you take for a little bit, but it only works when you're low on health. This Black Knight sword, if you do manage to get it, is really powerful. It's a great sword, not an ultra great sword, so it swings faster than Zweihander below it. And by default right now, it's actually doing more damage than Zweihander too. And you can read up the lore on it and whatever, but basically it's a really good sword, and people have been able to use that sword for the entire game. But it's more demanding too. You need higher stats to even use that weapon effectively. So if you want to build a character around using that, you can try that too, but you're really going to have to invest in strength and dexterity to use it effectively. Now, next thing we want to do is head up this tower. And if you have the master key, this is another door that you can unlock, but that message says, "Be wary of Fatty." It's because there's an enemy down there that can and will one-shot you, most likely, unless you fought him before. Even people who have played this game before will struggle with him right now if you've tried it. So instead, I would go up this tower, and I would look into these barrels here, because when you hit this barrel on the edge, there's this crystal lizard. Now, don't ask me how I just killed it there, but crystal lizards will always drop upgrade material when killed. This one gave me Twinkling Titanite, which is a special kind used to upgrade rare weapons, like the Black Knight sword I just picked up. It's really expensive to try and buy, and you really can't buy it or get it anytime soon, So always kill a crystal lizard when you see it. But they're going to try and run away, and they can actually disappear if you give them enough time. There's nothing else up here other than just more barrels, but he's right here in this barrel always. So just look out for that and make sure you get him. So right here is the boss, and that summon sign there was somebody who wants to do the boss. What you're gonna want, if you want to have an easier time with this fight, is you're gonna want to have this gold pine resin in your quick inventory next to your flasks. That way you can apply it later if you need to. You only have 3 uses though, so you have to kill this boss with these 3 uses, otherwise you don't have the extra damage. Which it's not impossible if you don't do it that way, it's just harder for a beginning player. So remember, it applies lightning to your right hand weapon, and I'm not going to use it right this second because it's got a timer. So if you want, you can summon another player for help. I wouldn't recommend it because most bosses you're probably going to have to do by yourself. But whenever you're ready, go ahead and traverse the white light or go through the fog. And you're going to have some time before the boss shows up. It's actually a distance thing, so you can stand here forever. You can't go back once you enter, because that's how bosses work. So what you need to do first before you run forward is actually go around the staircase and climb this ladder here. Because there's these 2 crossbowmen up here that will make this fight a lot tougher if you don't take them out now. Now, with them being gone, you can go back down the ladder here, and the boss will show up when you're about halfway across the bridge. So we're going to run down just a little bit, and then we're going to apply the lightning to the weapon here. That's what it looks like. It's timed for maybe about a minute. You're going to run to about here and then turn around, because there he is, and he's going to charge straight for you. Now, if you remember, you can do plunging attacks, and plunging attacks, they do extra damage. So if you turn around when I did, you have enough time to climb the ladder, fall down, and do a plunging attack for about 1/3 of his health, or more. So from there, it's just a matter of swinging and learning his attacks. I'd actually say this is one of the rare fights where blocking is a little bit better. But put your guard up and then put it down when you're not trying to block an immediate attack. Only block when you're about to be hit. Don't block the whole time, otherwise you run out of stamina. This boss in particular is weak to the lightning, that's why we use it. But once the lightning runs out, which you see it doesn't last very long, you're going to do a lot less damage. You can, if you want, you can try to climb back up the ladder and do a plunging attack, which I'll do at the end of this video. And just, you know, if you're doing alright, maybe see what kinds of attacks he's going to do. I'm actually just going to toy around with him for a little bit here to show you what he can do. But right there was a pretty okay timed roll. Like, you would have thought I wouldn't have gotten hit there, but I did. And that's kind of how this whole fight works. So I think blocking is just a little bit better. Now, when you get him about halfway or a little further than halfway from where you entered, you can sometimes make a break for it towards the ladder to climb up. But remember, he has to be a distance away, because if he's not, then he'll catch you. So try to keep him back here, wait for him to jump backwards or miss an attack, and then just try and make it. There, I got hit with a jump attack, and you can see how much damage that does. I'm going to heal again, and I'm going to try and bring him back since he's too close to the ladder now. You can also try and get him to attack like that, and maybe if you started running early you can get up here. But he's got good range. Like, I'm up pretty high and he still hit me there. So plunging attacks are not always the solution. But if you do manage to get another one, you can finish him off pretty cool and take down your first official boss, if you don't count the tutorial one, the Taurus demon. That's the bull demon that the shopkeeper was telling us about. He told us, hey, that's up here, up above. So this is the up above the guy was talking about. So somewhere around here, we should see a drake flying around, because he also told us that that's up here. So be on the lookout for that. So congrats when you beat that boss, because it's only going to get more difficult from here on out. That's not to say that your character and your skill will not improve, but the bosses will not be like that guy. So when you go down the steps, continue going down to this round part first, so that we can talk to Solaire over here. And you don't know him yet, but he's a great character in this game.
Ah, hello. You don't look hollow, far from it. I am Solaire of Astora, an adherent of the Lord of Sunlight. Now that I am undead, I have come to this great land, the birthplace of Lord Gwyn, to seek my very own son. You find that strange? Well, you should. No need to hide your reaction. I get that look all the time. Oh, aha. So I didn't scare you. I have a proposition, if you have a moment. The way I see it, our fates appear to be intertwined. In a land brimming with hollows, could that really be mere chance? So what do you say? Why not help one another on this lonely journey? This pleases me greatly. Well then, take this. We are amidst strange beings in a strange land. The flow of time itself is convoluted, with heroes centuries old phasing in and out. The very fabric wavers, and relations shift and obscure. There's no telling how much longer your world and mine will remain in contact. But use this to summon one another as spirits, cross the gaps between the worlds, and engage in jolly cooperation. Of course, we are not the only ones engaged in this, but I am a warrior of the sun. Spot my summon signature easily by its brilliant aura. If you miss it, you must be blind. Oh, hello there. I will stay behind to gaze at the sun. The sun is a wondrous body, like a magnificent father. If only I could be so grossly incandescent. Oh, hello there.
So Solaire is a really cool character. He says he's gonna stand here and look at the sun because it's awesome. And he gives you a white sign soapstone, which is what allows you to help other people with their boss fights. So when I pointed out earlier that there were real online people ready to help me with the boss, that was what they used here. They used this item to put down a summon sign so that they could be in your world. You have to allow them in, and that's kind of your confirmation. See, if I put it down, it only gives me the option to cancel it, but if it was somebody else's, it would say, do you want to summon them, yes or no? So if you've put it down by mistake and you don't want it down because you don't want to leave your game to go help somebody else, you can just approach it and click OK for cancel. And yeah, so that is how you play with other people. So if you have a friend that you're trying to play this with, or if you just want to go online and help people, then that is how you do it. I'm not going to be doing much of that because I want to play this game solo to show you as if you were doing this solo. Now this bridge looks pretty scary, and that's because here's our Drake. He ignites the entire bridge, and so we need to get behind cover or something. Usually he's already lit it on fire again, but for whatever reason he hasn't. That's kind of strange. He's usually really aggressive, But what you want to do is make your way down the stairs to the right there so that you can come down here and kick this ladder. Very important that you kick that, because that is now a shortcut. We can go up and down this ladder from the Undead Berg bonfire that we started at, and that is now a shortcut to all the way to that spot. Now, with your souls, however many you do have, you can level up a couple times, and try to level up in whatever you think you're going to play as. Like, I've been using a shield and straight sword, but if I wanted to switch to a heavy weapon or a dexterity weapon like a dagger, I would level up strength for the heavy weapon and dexterity for the dagger weapon. So start thinking about the class that you want to be. If you're a sorcerer or whatever, you can choose to level up intelligence, or if you want to try sorcery or miracles, you can level up faith for miracles too. So just try and build your character to whatever you think you want to do. I went through some weapons earlier so you can kind of get an idea of what kind of character you want to create. For this video, I'm going to stick with my current guy with a sword and shield, and he's not going to change much more than that, because I feel like that's a very nice beginning build to this game. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful, and next time we're just going to get into bigger bosses, harder bosses, and more fun areas. So thank you for watching, and I will see you guys at the next video.